Morocco was all about mood. It was just an incredible, dominating place. It just grabbed you and took you into it. Behind me is the ocean and the city of Essaouira, also called Mogador in previous times. So this is out on the coast of Morocco, Atlantic Ocean. When I got there, I traveled there from Essaouira Hotel in Marrakesh, hitchhiking with a young lady named Eileen and a group of people from England, some people from the United States and other places. And we all traveled together. We were a bunch of kids having a good time, socializing really. And when we got to the end of the road, we came to this incredible place that was filled with magic, mystery, and a lovely, cool environment. Just look at the scene behind me 50 years ago. At this time, I was hanging out on the Atlantic Ocean in Morocco. And it was just an incredible situation. I was involved with all these people from all over the world, and somehow or another, I was the center of it, seemingly. And we stayed in some crazy old hotel, the Hotel Central, which is a stinky old wet mildew place. We stayed there for a few days in a couple of rooms, and then somehow or another we found ourselves a private room inside a house that had stained glass windows. It went onto a courtyard and had Moroccan people that came in and served us and gave us tea. And it was just an incredible environment to live in. And I just kind of enjoyed moment by moment. There was a lot of fun stuff going on. We were doing some marijuana, hashish, and we also had this opium pods that we were cooking into tea. And we were getting a little bit crazy, a little too high, but it was kind of a group thing. And I was a part of this kind of social circle. It made things interesting, but it also made me feel like, you know, maybe I gotta get out of this thing. I mean, I don't know. It's like worse than being home. My mother, my sister, my brother, my friends, my girlfriends, oh my God, you know, and this is kind of hemming me in. So I'm fighting for freedom to look out at that ocean, the gray Atlantic Ocean. And there I was, enjoying myself, in spite of some conflicts. One of the things that's fantastic about doing the kind of traveling that I did when I was a young man 50 years ago is that there are destinations. There's the road, there's going from here to there, and those are incredible times and high adventure. And then there's, you get to where you thought you wanted to go. Okay, so first of all, yeah, I wanted to go to Marrakesh. Then I get to Marrakesh, and what do I find out? Oh my God, you're in the Hotel Essaouira. There's this incredible city on the Atlantic Ocean. So you get to a certain point, you go, well, I gotta go there. That's next. Even though I had no idea where I was going when I started going to Marrakesh, that I would be going on to Essaouira. And I did, and I went on to this incredible city by the Atlantic Ocean. But this was a destination, even though I didn't know it was a destination until I got to Marrakesh. Food is a big deal to everybody. You know, we're human beings, we enjoy eating. Even picky people enjoy eating when they get what they want. And Morocco was this place with couscous, these big dishes, and everybody would share. And I remember particularly in Essaouira, we would go out on the docks, and there'd be places where the fishermen were and people that would take in fish. And I didn't really know what was going on. There's all kinds of activity, but they had these kind of shacks. And I'd go in with maybe a friend I'd be walking with, and a guy would take us in. They had this idea of American culture there, by the way. Steve McQueen was on the wall and the calendar. You may have, you know, some US Hollywood stars besides that. So it was, they liked American culture. So even though they weren't American culture, they seemed to know about it. They knew about our music. But we'd go in these places and they'd be cooking these little fish and they'd offer us things. People would offer us tea. They would take when us, me, and the other travelers I became involved with. But even as a lone person, you come in, have some soup, come into a restaurant. They wanted to buy you things. They were very, very generous people, the Moroccans in particular. In fact, I would say basically all of the third world people until you got to hostile places like Iran was not exactly that friendly. But maybe Syria too, but most places, Lebanon, the other place in North Africa, the people welcomed foreigners in. They were interested in me as a foreigner. And the life in Essaouira was full of that kind of energy and interactivity, and the people were really very, very kind to me. And I would say even loving. The other thing I want to mention is that it started to become a kind of a spiritual idea for me in this part of the world. And I didn't know what it was really, and I don't know what spiritual really means particularly, but I was feeling something that was going on there, and it seemed as if I was being led in some sense, even though I didn't know where I was going. And one of the things that happened to me while I was in Essaouira was I met somebody, and they were reading tarot cards. It was out on the beach at night, a lot of activity out on the beach at night, and there were some lights coming from the city along the road that went along the beach and along the walkway there, so you could actually have, it wasn't like pitch black. You walk towards the ocean, it got blacker, and walk down the beach, blacker and blacker, because you go down south from the city. But anyway, the tarot cards they had, so I had just written in my journal too, that I asked the question, because here I am, I'm a little more than a month trying to kill some time. I don't really know where I'm going, kind of at the end of the world, thinking, where do I go from here? And my question is, when will I go home? Home was important to me. It still was, and my people and everything else, and I knew that's where I would wind up. And of course, she read all the answers to the tarot cards, and the answer to the question was, you're a pawn. So there I was, thinking, I guess I'm like a leaf hanging on a tree here, so I'm just going to go with it, go with the flow. Somehow I find myself with a group of 5 or 6. There were the 3 young ladies from England. There was this Nancy. There was Marshall, and he was a US guy. And, and we kind of hung out together, and we started taking meals together. It was almost like a little bit of a commune, but we were staying in a hotel, and I kind of had a fancy for this one young lady, Eileen. And, I was a young man, and, I actually was missing female companionship, frankly. And it was pretty cool to get involved with this gal. And we started getting involved at the Hotel Central, and I had a little bit of a fling with her, I would say. And we'd go about during the day, and we became kind of like boyfriend and girlfriend a little bit. Well, I was kind of being careful. I didn't want to get drawn into anything, because I really had this idea of not wanting to have a girlfriend on this travel, because I wanted to be free and independent, and I didn't want to be hemmed in. So anyway, we would go about the town, and we were having a good time together. And after a few days, we found a room. It was a big, wide room, and it had kind of beds around the edges of it. Well, it was more like kind of a settee, and it had cushions, and you could sleep on them. And you could probably fit 6 to 8 people in there. It was a big room, and it had these big doors that opened up with stained glass windows, and it looked over a courtyard, and there was a family there, and they would rent it out this big room, and they would kind of provide you some service. And that's what we kind of moved into. And that was kind of a very cool environment. The streets of Essaouira were simply magical. They wound about, mostly dirt, and you found all these little nooks and crannies. And the people were quite interesting. They had a certain kind of a different feel to them than the rest of Morocco that I was at. I think it was like they were voodoo people or ocean people or island people instead of being just regular Moroccans. And I would go about and have the greatest of time meeting the people. The spirit was there. At night, we would walk about the town and feel as if we were being led about. And the we, of course, is me and my little cadre of English women and American women and American men and Australian men and men from Germany. And there's this whole little cadre of Europeans mostly and Americans and Australians, etc., that had just a great time hanging out in this wonderful town with this wonderful spiritual approach. Another thing about this hippie stuff that was going on at the time was that it was really an American thing. And even though some European people had gotten into it, and even though the British kind of brought it over with the Beatles, but it was the San Francisco, even Ann Arbor. I mean, it was like really coming out of these urban centers and universities, really, mostly. And the reason for that was the Vietnam War. There was a lot of resistance to the Vietnam War because it frankly didn't make much sense to me personally and to many people at the time. And even though it was this terrible war that was being fought, it was like not smart to me. So I was very glad to get out of it, but the draft. But I had this big head of hair because that was a symbol, you know. So here I am in Morocco. Well, a lot of my symbol's gone, but the hair is starting to go back in, and I got some pretty curly hair, and it's coming along. But I'm hippie, hippie, hippie. I'm Mr. Hippie. I'm the Bandito American, you know. So here I am in Morocco, kind of the symbol of all of this crazy idea of hippie, which is known throughout the world at this point. But I'm the symbol. So next week is week 8 of the exciting Wander, and it's another week in Essaouira, Morocco. The plot thickens, the romance thickens and then sickens. Drugs, acid. It's quite a trip for Stevie, who ultimately has to flee Essaouira to go back to Marrakesh with another lady. The city of Essaouira is calling me. Next day, I check out of my room and head to the road to hitchhike. I meet up with one of the English girls, Eileen. You want to hitch together? I ask. Depends on where you're heading, she responds. Essaouira. Okay, that's where I'm heading too, she says. Great. In a short time, we snag a ride down the road for 20 kilometers. However, no luck hitching from there, so we walk to a bus stop and flag down a bus that takes us the rest of the way. Where do you live in England? Just outside of London, she says. Your other friends, Mary and Buffy, are they from there too? Yes, we're all from the same town and went to the same schools since we were kids. We always talked about going on a traveling adventure one day, and here it is. Here we are. We started in Amsterdam. Me too. That place is incredible. I stayed a little over a week, about 10 days, but I had to save my soul from the constant lure of debauchery. We only stayed a couple of days. Quite the night scene in that town for the hippie crowd, she says. As we roll down the countryside, it is very exotic and rustic, with camels dotting the landscape everywhere as we pass through quaint little towns, one after the other. I'm really enjoying the female companionship with my traveling mate Eileen. She is fun to talk to, with her cheerful nature, always smiling. She has huge breasts like melons. She's probably a tad overweight for her size, but she's juicy good to look at for me. My eyes and mind have been starved of womanhood. I am ready to let the good times roll.